But this week we're going to talk a little bit about what the vision is for a new life. And so if you're new with us, this is what we're about. We make fully reproducible followers of Jesus in the everyday stuff of life. And so we believe unashamedly that the more people follow Jesus, the more like the actual version of themselves they were created to be, they become. And so we are unashamed in inviting people to follow and trust in Jesus with their lives. And we have a definition of what that is, because if you're going to try to make followers, you should probably be able to know what that is. And so a follower of Jesus is someone with an ever-increasing awareness to the presence and the lordship of Jesus in the everyday stuff of life. And so we want to teach you guys how to recognize the presence of Jesus, the holiness of spaces that maybe don't seem holy in your everyday life. How can you recognize the presence of Jesus when your dishwasher doesn't work and then you become the dishwasher, right? And how do you recognize the lordship of Jesus in your relationships with your everyday people? And so we have a pathway or a design, a journey, a pilgrimage that we want everybody to go on as a part of forming you into a follower of Jesus. So for us, that looks like this. The first step in everybody's journey is to actually know Jesus. Salvation is the way that we talk about this. You make a attachment connection to the risen Jesus, and that changes everything about your life. And so that's everybody's first step. We want people to know Jesus, and then we want to do everything we can to equip you to what it looks like to follow him in the everyday stuff of life. The second thing is that we believe that every person, as defined by Jesus, is a heart, soul, mind, strength complex that is designed for love. So every person is designed to be fully known and to know other people. And you cannot practice your faith in Jesus without practicing it with his people. It's just the way it is. And so Jesus says the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so as you know Jesus and you begin to walk with him more, you will begin to love other people. And you need to be able to get into a group because the everyday stuff of life, that's where that stuff happens. And listen, not to get too somber, but there is a time coming in your life, sooner rather than later, where the ministry of people being present that you know are with you and that you know are going to stay in the room even when it's hard and awkward is coming. Okay? You need real relationships with real people. And I want to encourage you as your pastor, it takes on average about 15 hours of FaceTime to feel connected to a person. Do you know how many people you're going to feel connected to just by doing this? Zero. You just will not feel that connection. If you go and you get in a group, it will still take 4 months for you to feel connected. I realize that this is a big ask. I am inviting you to do something that feels awkward and unhelpful for 4 months. But then it will feel really good, okay? And I realize that these things are hard because we have all different kinds of things going on, and so we want to try to create more opportunities for connection in this coming year. We want everybody to serve on a team. You know, you need to find all the people in this church that have all the rough edges that you're supposed to help smooth out. And I don't know if you know this, but you're also kind of rough, you know? And as you serve alongside people, you begin to see these kinds of things. And also serving is like one of the ways that we practice this mission together. But listen, the church is not just like some organization that exists for itself. And our vision is never to just help you guys always be busy with church stuff, because that's not the point. The point is that we're trying to figure out how we can engage the world and the community with the gifts that God has given us here, okay? And so we want to encourage you to engage the world. We want to help activate the kingdom creativity that God has given to each of us, and then empower you to do those things and invite other people to come alongside you to serve our community. And so we're going to be sending out this week a survey that helps us get a snapshot of the different skills that we have represented in the life of our church and the different passions that we have. And so I want to encourage you when we send that out this week to just take a moment. It'll take about 5 minutes to just fill it out. And if you forget, don't worry, I'll remind you next week. One of the ways that we want to create new opportunities for people to get in groups is through New Life University. And we realize that small groups are often very hard for, especially those of you that are shift workers. It's very difficult to make other spaces to meet with people because you're off when no one else is off and you're on when no one else is on. And so we want to create this opportunity that will happen on Sunday mornings, and it's another space where you can get in a group with people. And we have 2 different ways that we want to equip you in what we feel like we feel like these 2 things are very important to the way that you worship the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And so as humans, we're meaning-making creatures, and we are desperate to find stories and figure out what story it is we are in. And if you don't figure out what story it is that's the true story of the world and figure out what your part is in that, you will be pushing literally against the grains of creation. And so I'm sure that you've seen, and if you haven't, this isn't for you, but there's a hashtag main character energy. There's some subreddits, right? And so really the truth is that Jesus is the main character of all history, and we're supporting cast. And the sooner that we kind of take hold of that, the more freeing that actually is, because it is really crushing to your soul to be the main character of everything. So that's what the story of the Bible is about. But if you're going to be in a story, you also need to know the lines to that story. You got to figure out, if I'm in this story, how do I live then? And that's where we have the Foundations course that helps you kind of understand doctrine, which is kind of like, how do we live this story out together? So those are the 2 classes that we're going to be offering starting on September 15th. And we also want to just create more space to just be a prayerful church together as people have need. And to have a team of people that are praying regularly for different things. We just, as an example, we just did a teacher's commissioning service, and we invited every teacher and administrator that was there to fill out a prayer card. And we assigned those prayer cards to our prayer team so that every day these people are being prayed for by name. And so this is the kind of stuff that we want to continue to encourage. So we've created a prayer line that is just a phone that's going to be manned by somebody at all times. It's a shared thing. But if you want to be a part of this and a part of praying for people as they have need, please text us your name, and we'll get you added to that list so that you can begin to pray for people as they have need and as things happen. We're not a church that is a revivalist church in the sense that we make a set time and say, this is a revival, everybody. And we get everybody really excited. Woo! You know? But we do want to pursue the Spirit for real revival. Because the Spirit does awaken and do things in human hearts that are super powerful. And so we want to continue to pursue God for those things. And so we're going to be doing renewal prayer and worship nights. The first one's coming up on October the 5th. Listen, I want you to know that as a pastor, I am absolutely committed to the long obedience in the same direction and to teach you guys the practices that put you in the pathways to grace and encourage you that following Jesus is a process, but I also believe that the Spirit quickens that process oftentimes and does things in a moment in people's lives that we cannot explain. It is a supernatural thing. And so we want to continue to pray that the Spirit would move in those powerful ways in and through our body. I want you guys to understand that as we have continued to grow as a leadership, we are operating under this principle that we believe we are living in one of the most evangelistic moments in the history of our nation. The reason for that is many, but to sum it up, we are essentially coming to the ends of a lot of different ideologies that have been tried to play out and found wanting. And many people are suffering under those ideologies because essentially they've worshipped the wrong kinds of things and it has left them wanting. And so even the past few people that we have baptized in the life of our church have come into our church without any connection here at all. They have just parachuted in. And so I believe that as God continues to use us in our friends and neighbors' lives, we have to continue to make space for people. And so I do believe that the time to take risks for the church is now. This is not a time to like slink back and to be like, ooh, we don't know, you know? So I think that this is a time where we need to move forward together. And so as we are moving forward and as we continue to grow, I want you to know that we are, as a church, reaching a precipice of the amount of folks that introduce changes into the life of a church, which are kind of losses in a way, okay? And this isn't like a funeral for these kinds of things, but I just want you to understand that as we have like different size dynamics that are realities in the life of the church. And so the first thing is new options. As we create other services or other opportunities for people to connect in the life of the church, it will not be possible for you guys to know everyone. It just won't. And many of you have already started to feel the pain of that with the 2 services. And I do want you to know that is a loss. Like, everyone loves the Cheers church, where everybody knows your name, right? That's Cheers, right? I didn't mess that up. Thank you. Thank you, Gen Xers, for helping me, and Boomers. Later, you can look up Cheers for the rest of you. So it is hard. And so we want to create, you do need to be fully known and fully loved by people, and we want to create spaces for those things to happen. But within the life of the church, it's already too big for you to be fully known and loved by everybody in this room. It just is. So we also have shifting power dynamics. There's decisions that will have to be made more quickly by staff and lay leaders that are more attached to the situation. And so sometimes those things are hard because previously in the life of our church, a lot of the decisions were made by lay leaders. And things went a little slower, and we were a little smaller. And so I want you to know that these are dynamics that happen, and they can be uncomfortable. We have to formalize communication. We're working on this, okay? It is very hard to shift to a more formalized communication, and you guys are probably feeling the pain of that. I'm sure that many of you feel like, I never know what's happening, and we're doing everything we can to try to help you know what's happening. But we are a multi-everything church that's spread out against all socioeconomic backgrounds and also age groups, which is a beautiful thing, but it's a real pain from a communication standpoint. And so I want you to know that we're doing everything we can, and we appreciate your feedback, both positive and constructive, on how we can do better with that. Leadership change. So the dynamics of leadership shift because there's just time restraints where as much as I would love to, I can't sit down with every one of you at a moment's notice because of the nature of things. And so some of those dynamics shift. And I began to invest a lot of my time purposefully in other people who are leading ministries so that people can be pastored and shepherded and taken care of. And so those are shifts that happen, and they are losses. They are losses. They're hard. And the other thing is that we have to have a willingness to change facilities. We may not always be the church behind the trees, you know? And those things are difficult. There is loss that's associated with those things. And so I want you to know that as elders, we're very aware of these dynamics in the life of our church. And so we've been in conversations with Gronin, coming and trying to look at the space to see, is this a viable space for a building that could hold potentially 300 people and have parking for that many? And so, unfortunately, we haven't heard anything back from them yet about kind of what that could look like here in this space. But I want you to know that we've also talked to church building consulting firms. And I just want to give you like a realistic number. And again, this is not to say none of these things can happen. I just want you to get a sense of what reality is so that when God does provide in the way that he's going to, we can all rejoice together and praise him, okay? So in order to have a conversation with a church consulting firm, you need $500,000 per year in annual giving for 3 years. And the reason for that is that banks don't like to foreclose on churches, and so they don't give risky loans to churches. It's bad for business, you know? Nobody wants to bank at a bank that takes churches. So it's not a good tagline. We take churches. So that's the reality. Our annual giving over the past 3 years, it has been increasing as our churches continue to grow and as more of you feel connected to the life of our church. But our average giving over the last 3 years is about $150,000. And so we're not really close to a conversation there. The other thing that we can do that we've looked into is possibly renting a space for weekly meetings, but to rent a space that accommodates the size of church that we are with the 2 services going to 1, it's about $1,000 a week, just as an average. It's a little bit more in some spaces, a little bit less, and that's not including all the tear-up, set-down stuff. And there's no space for any kind of midweek things, okay? So I just want to kind of set the reality, but I don't want you guys to feel like this is a hopeless situation. I just want you to understand kind of the struggles that are happening. But I also want you to know that we are praying together, and I want you to pray with us about how we can make space for others. So with that, I do want to open this up for questions. Oh, wow. It's fascinating. Q&A times. And so I'm going to invite Brent to come forward. And our other elder, Tom, is downstairs with the kids, and Rex is in Arkansas right now. So Brent and I will answer your questions. And because we're recording this and because we want people to be able to look at it, we'll repeat your question, not because we didn't hear you, but we want to make sure everybody heard it. So.
Don't be shy. Everybody's got a question, I'm sure.
Yes. With New Life U, it sounds like classes are going to be offered that kind of. Can you speak more about the types of classes that are going to be offered through New Life U?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the question was, could I speak more about the types of classes that are going to be offered through New Life U? So New Life U, like a lot of things we're doing right now, is an experiment, okay? So if that experiment goes well, then we would offer another group of classes in the spring, which we have some different ideas of what those could be, but we haven't nailed those down yet. Because again, we're just kind of trying a bunch of things right now, and so we communicate those as experiments. And there are no experiments without trial and error, and there's no trial and error without error. So sometimes these things are not going to work, and that's just the way it is. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Are the New Life University, is it the whole service? Like, so if they come at 9 o'clock, they go to the office building so they don't come for worship? Yep, that's right. That's correct. Yep. I'm sorry. The question was, does New Life U, is it for the whole service? And the answer is yes. So it'll be each of them are 11-week classes that last for the duration of the service.
And because of that, that's why the Sunday school.
Got to speak into the microphone. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm one of those dinosaurs.
I know. It's okay. I help you.
But that's why the Sunday schools are now meeting for the full service, having their own time of worship and fellowship down there with their songs and leading in, so that it opens up that the parents can attend the New Life U without having to worry about their kids being left alone.
Mm-hmm. Jesse.
Goes to the New Life U for the 9 o'clock and then comes here for the 11 o'clock. Does that mean your kids are going to be able to be downstairs in both services?
Yeah. Just to repeat the question was if you went to a New Life U and then you came to church, would your kids be at both services for the kids? And the answer is yes. So yeah, we realize that could create some boredom for some kids, but research shows, especially for young kids, that repetition actually is helpful. And so we're not like too concerned about that, but that is the answer to that question.
Also, to go along with that, there's different teachers for both classes, so that they're not going to have the same leader sitting up there in front of them for 2 hours. It's going to be a variance, so there'll be a variety of what they get exposed to as well.
Just for clarification, I think I get it. So go to you at 9, go to church at 11, or go to church at 9, go to you at 11?
So yeah, so the question was a clarification of like how the New Life U works. So there is a class at 9. So if you were to go to that class at 9, you would go at 9 to the house, then come to church at 11. There's also a class at 11. So the option would be that you could come at 9 to church and then go to the class at 11. And that was the clarification. So yeah.
How long has this church been here as New Life Fellowship?
So the question was, how long has New Life been in this building? Is that a fair summary of the question? So the New Life moved here in 2016. 15, excuse me. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
He was
Good.
still in high school, so.
I was not in high school. I just can't remember. But yes.
You mentioned something about transition that started in 2021 to now.
Sure.
Speak more about what that was.
Yeah, do you want to speak to that? Just to,
You're a little more familiar than
I don't want to dominate. The question was, I spoke about a transition that happened from 2021 to now. Could I just explain that a little more? So yeah, so in the fall of 2021, there was about 30 of us gathering in a room together. And so since then, God has multiplied us by quite a bit. And so there's been kind of a rapid time of growth for the life of our church. And then last year, we added a service in September, kind of around this time. And we're now basically at capacity at the 2 services. So that's kind of the transitional time. That's a great question.
As expansion, we've talked about this in my church group, if we expand this current church, it's going to take getting up to code and all that stuff and everything. Have you guys thought about outreaching to the community, Bard Materials, John Deere, these companies that have deeper pockets than New Life, that can donate to building this church and offering their services? Our company will pour the cement.
And it'll come out of Sarah's paycheck. Do you want to speak to that, Brent? And say the question first. And
Okay. The idea was, have we looked outside of the local assembly, our local group, for assistance in building and constructing?
Materials.
Materials and stuff.
Here.
And we have contacted, as Kyle said, we had been talking to Gronin. We had an architect and also another person from Gronin that does this. And that's their business, is they come in, they look at what we have, and then tell us how we can expand to do what we'd like to do and see if our property is enough. Because coming on, as you mentioned earlier in your question, we have to meet codes.
Yeah.
So our parking code, we have been grandfathered in because this building has been here for so long. Our parking code is definitely, for the amount of people we have, probably not sufficient for what the city would require.
Yeah.
They also require different things with fire safety, which we're not required to meet because of the age of the building. So all of these things are being looked at before we can even think about making a decision about seeking outside help. You know,
Right.
maybe they'll say, hey, your best bet would be to sell and relocate because of the layout of the land.
Right.
Or it could be, well, yeah, we can do this, we can move over here, we can demolish that building that's over here, use that for parking, expand the building out this way or out that way. But we don't know, because we're waiting for results of what their investigation.
Yep. That's great.
This might be not a realistic question.
Okay. Just as a clarification, she said it might not be a realistic question. Okay, so go ahead.
Could we ever look at renting a facility for Sunday worship and keeping this for our offices and all of our weekly meetings? And
Yeah, so the question was, could we potentially rent a space to meet in on Sunday, but keep this for midweek things and offices? So anything's possible, right? So the right now, as it stands, in order to do something like that, we would need to, our giving would need to increase by about $60,000 or $70,000, just to accommodate the rental process and paying renters insurance, all that kind of stuff, and also probably purchasing additional gear to make all that possible, right? So it is possible. It's a difficult thing because, if you hold on to a place, you're also continuing to pay maintenance on a building that you may not be using as regularly. So it just depends on how we begin to do midweek ministry and what that looks like. So, but I do think it's within the realm of possibility. I don't think it's an imaginary question.
For the people that are new to New Life, could you explain how this building came about for New Life?
Yes, that's a great question. So, do you want to do that one or?
Well, you've been
Okay.
around it longer.
I know. So, well, I haven't been around longer, but I've been in this area longer. All right, here we go. The question was, could I explain kind of how this building came to New Life? So that's actually a great story. I'm glad that you bring that up. So before we were in this space as a church, we rented the building that used to be Grandview Methodist, is now St. Elias the Prophet, across the street from Findlay Hospital. And so we rented both the upstairs and the downstairs of that building for 8 years, probably. We were paying about $5,000 a month in rent alone without utilities, which was quite a space to heat and keep cool. And then there was a church that was meeting at this space that unfortunately dissolved, and they gave us this building. So we have inherited this building basically from a church that unfortunately didn't make it, and all the land and everything for free. So we own this outright. We have no mortgage or anything. But yeah, so God has supernaturally provided in ways that we didn't expect previously, and we're praying again for the same. We just don't have any answers as to what that is yet. We probably have time for one more question. And I also want to encourage you, if you have other questions for the elders, we're available, and we love to just hear from you, and we want you to be heard. And so if you find us here as you're leaving, talk to us. If you had a question that you didn't feel as comfortable maybe in this space, we're happy to answer those questions as best we can. We don't have all the answers either. But is there one more question maybe? Something burning? Yeah.
So when you look at the $150,000 of the average today, and you say really for us to have a conversation about doing something different in terms of a building that has to be increased more than 3 times.
That's right.
$500,000. So it's kind of in my brain, I think about the chicken and the egg, right? Like, are we going to be able to more than triple that with the current congregation? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to experience growth in order to grow to that $500,000. So are we even in a position to grow in the way that we need to in order to then prompt the $500,000 of annual giving?
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Going, like, where-
I'm going to try to summarize what you said, but I think it's a really good. So basically, what was said is just that we are kind of, because building a building continues to go up. Even I would say that conversation that I had was 6 months ago, so it might be 600,000 now. But because of that, and because of the space that we have, this space doesn't necessarily accommodate a growth that would be needed in order to achieve that as a giving regularly thing. And so I would say that's absolutely true. I don't, what we're still praying about is we think that God wants us to grow. We're just not exactly sure the how yet and what that needs to look like. My hunch is that people are mostly formed in small spaces. That's where they get the most formation. But in the United States, for whatever reason, larger churches are better at reaching people for Christ. And so we're trying to figure out how can we achieve both of those things in the sense that we can have a larger gathering, but have smaller spaces where people are truly being formed. But again, that's why we're trying so many experiments. It's because we're living in a time where there's just no playbook for this. And so other churches have done a lot of these kinds of things, but in this post-COVID reality that we're living in, where people have different ways that they commit to things, it's a very interesting time. But it's also exciting because, every local community has to pray through that and just like experiment and try things. So yeah, I think that's it for now. And so why don't we pray? I'll have the team come forward, and we're just going to close out our time of worship. We'll just end with a prayer. I'm just gonna read this prayer, Jesus' high priestly prayer from John.